Hi, and welcome to the podcast channel for Podcast My Business and Content Made Easy. And today we have Christoph Casimir from aesit.com.au, and we're having a chat today about protecting your business investment in hardware and data. It seems like a long topic, but it's really, really important, and we're covering off on the big C where we are because we're in Sydney and we're stuck at home. How are you, Christoph?
Mate, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Tony.
No worries at all. Look, thank you for taking the time. Look, it's been interesting. I'm just calling it the big C now because I know that means something else anyway. Let's call it the coronavirus C. There we are. Let's just get it out there.
Sure.
We're both in Sydney. We're in lockdown. Half the country's in lockdown. We're heading forward. We're moving on. We're getting past the panic. And we're now getting into the curiosity stage. I want to see what's going to happen next.
Sure.
And what's going to happen next is a hybrid model of people working it from home and from the office. Mm-hmm. We had the mad rush to get people to be able to work from home. And now, so how do you, with technology, being able to work from home and from the office going forward?
Interesting point, and it's a good one. Thanks for raising it, Tony. So technology has enabled us to be more versatile, right? So if you think about it, we're very disparate in our workforce these days. You know, everyone used to love coming to the office, the sociality of it, the security of it, all of that was wonderful. Now we're all sort of being asked to work from home for a period. The future will definitely be nothing like the past, and that's been written. You know, major tech companies have set that, let's call it, benchmark moving forward. And, we're going to see that hybrid model. You're absolutely right. It could be a mix of, 2 days in the office, 3 days in the office, so businesses get their assets utilised. But in the same light, it's because of that, people are finding, the commute, for example, Dr. Adam Fraser refers to the ability to have a third space, right? So the commute from the office to home gave that ability to separate your business frame of mind and then to go home. And I think that's probably why we'll see that resurgence to people getting into the office.
And also, another thing is that we both have hot cars, and if we don't get to drive them to the office or meetings or whatever, then what's the point of having a hot car?
This is true. And it's not like we can take them to the racetrack right now either. So,
no.
It just is what it is, mate. But in so doing, that's set a benchmark for many loopholes, let's call it, and security loopholes especially, that we as users and corporate businesses need to be a bit more mindful of and considerate, especially now that we're working from home a hell of a lot, and it probably won't change in the dynamic very soon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a whole range of risks. I mean, I'm just thinking of even data. Data is a huge business asset that businesses undervalue and underutilize. But if you've got a sales database and your staff are working from home, it's so much easier for them to copy that data, utilize that data, and then go to a competitor with that data. So how do you manage that sort of risk?
Look, at the end of the day, if someone wants to be corrupt as such, then the ability to do that is, you can always do that, even from the office, Tony. You can screenshot. Let's be fair, you can take a camera out, no different to you being in the office as you would be at home. Businesses are more likely to log data and activity now, so technology certainly enabled that. And if you think of your business data asset, the volatility of your data is probably is biggest paramount right now, not because the theft is coming from internally. In actual fact, 73% of theft doesn't actually occur internally. It occurs externally at the moment in Australia. And that's where people's focuses needs to be. So from that perspective, you've got to consider some pretty simple basics, both in education. So, if you want, let's go through my top 5 tips in regards to being a little bit more security aware. Number 1, to your point, it's all about education. So the ability to actually educate your staff on, what to think, how to actually act, think before you click, for example, right? You'll see this take a wild stab at it. How many text messages randomly have you copped over the last week that you've got
Next.
no idea who they're from?
Oh, look, I get a few every day. And as for emails, thankfully, I've got a filter, and people need to be aware that you can get
Hmm.
filters for emails. But yeah, non-stop phone calls, emails, texts.
Correct.
My favorite one at the moment is the recorded overseas voice from Australian Data Protection Agency or something, or the ATO. If you don't pay this
Correct.
bill, we're going to take you to court. I'm going, huh? So yeah, they
Look,
try, but
correct. And that's the biggest thing. So first things first, education is ultimately the key to enabling staff to be able to be a bit more secure at home. Part of what you talked about, for example, around those data assets, the cruciality of it, businesses' data is, it's now actually a line on your P&L. You're seeing it more and more. Insurers want to see it there. Banks want to understand it. It's becoming a crucial part of business transaction and activity. So guess what? That asset's so vital, it's so important that you need to have a proper data strategy and backup plan. Now, so what does that mean? Here's your second tip, right? Education one. Second, back it up. Consider an alternative, what we call air-gapped service, where you actually don't have the same data stored in the same location. So for me to back up, for example, my data on my laptop, that's kind of like putting your keys next to the car outside and then hoping no one steals it, right? So the concept is having a cloud-based service, or what we call an external third-party air-gapped service, being able to back your data up in the case that if you do happen to have your systems corrupted, your applications corrupted, that way you don't have that corruption follow you to your backup. 93% of all hacks or cybersecurity threats can't be recovered without a proper data or backup strategy, as an example. So that's pretty much the first one that you would probably want to consider it's a pretty simple task. You can back up your mailbox for anywhere up to $5 a month, unlimited, and know for the fact that your data is going to be sitting there outside of your laptop in the case that you have an event. So,
right.
Third one, part one, the education train. Ask. The biggest problem we have in a disparate working environment is the inability for someone to just as simply walk up to your desk and ask. So, Tony, you've sent me this email saying that this invoice is due for this supplier, and it looks legitimate. It's in your tone of voice. It's got your email address at the top. All looks pretty legitimate, and so I guess I should consider it. Normally, if you're in the office environment, I would be able to just pick up the phone, my landline, or I'd just walk over to your desk and go, hey, Tony, what's this? Right? And it's the same as with the links that we're getting. You're getting a lot more email links asking you to click here. You're getting a lot of text messages going, your voicemail is currently locked, click here. So first things first, if you're unaware or unsure, ask. That's probably the most important thing, right? Pick up the phone, give Tony a call, your accounts person, whoever the link is, and don't click on them, because at the end of the day, if any, let's call it reputable service, they'll send you the information not asking you to follow on from a link. So generally, and you'll see this, Australia Post will say, your tracking number is tracking number XYZ. Please go to the Australia Post website and put this in. They won't give you the link. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's interesting. You used to be able to, I know I do that myself with emails on the computer. I hover over the link and I can see the link. How can you do that on a mobile?
You can't effectively do that. You can copy it and therefore paste it into a note, for example, and that generally gives you the URL. But my honest suggestion is don't click on anything from a text message. That's usually the best way. And if it looks suspicious, eBay telling you that your latest purchase and you haven't purchased anything on eBay, it's pretty common that it won't have happened.
Yeah, they're very clever. They go for the simplistic option. So I get them from PayPal, and they go, "Oh, you have PayPal credit from your last purchase or refund or whatever." And I go, "Well, hang on, I don't deal with PayPal. I refuse to have anything to do with PayPal. Point blank."
Look,
because there's so many scams, and PayPal and whatever is not a good system to work with. Okay, so what other tips can you think of?
So MFA, multi-factor or 2FA authentication. You'll be familiar with this. It's a little bit cumbersome to put it on, but biggest one, your banking systems. Absolutely put on MFA. Now, this could mean that it'll send you a text message for you to enter a code, or you could use something like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. There's quite a number of those tools out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, turn it on. Turn it on your social media, turn it on your banking accounts, turn it on your email accounts. It is the biggest way to reduce cyber threats. So 90% of threats to online accounts is cut out by the fact that you turn on MFA. So biggest one you can do. One of the biggest things we did with all of our corporate customers about 24 months ago is we turned MFA on for everything. The pushback was heavy, I get it. The funny part is now it's become common practice. People don't think about it and they're actually a lot more secure. And so when they are being attempted to be hacked, they're getting a text message saying, this is your code. And now that these users are so aware, they can see that their accounts are attempting to be hacked. So they alert us as a security provider, and we already see half of these, to know that the fact that their accounts need to be monitored for that. So MFA, multi-factor authentication, turn it on. That's definitely important.
Even my Steam game account wants to have MFA. I'm thinking, wow, I don't do anything really financial on my game account, but it is all everywhere. And look, I know I've spoken in the past about password managers and how important password managers are. They need to have MFA or 2FA critically on there.
Totally.
And you're right, you can get a download onto your mobile authenticator app. I've got that for $0. It's really, really easy.
Yeah, look, and to be fair with you, Tony, the worst thing people do at the moment is post up useless, and in effect their theory is it's useless bits of information on things like social media. And to your point, right, putting information about the tools that you use online is basically letting cybersecurity, cyber threats, etc., build a profile about you. And that's the worst thing you can do. Because if you'll check, a prime example is, what are the security questions that they ask you when you go to reset your account? And it's funny because people will go, this was where I grew up. Hey, guess what? That information is available on your social media account because you put it there. So don't. My biggest piece of advice, don't put that sort of information out there. It's all good and well, and it's nice. The other thing is, Tony, for example, is that you take a photo. I'm sure you've seen this. You take a photo on your phone. Now, you're an Android user. I'm familiar. But you can see on that photo where and what time that photo was taken, exactly the GPS and geolocation for it, the time, etc. Now, did you know when you upload that photo, that information still goes with it straight to the social media platform? So the social media providers have so much information about you because of the fact that you have geotagged the photo. So people are building profiles about it. So if your Facebook account can get hacked, that sort of information means that they can then build a profile about you. So moving on to
now,
the next bit.
Now that's interesting because I don't have location on for anything. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And also on my mobile, I don't, because one, I know it used to use up battery power. I don't know if it still does. But I just don't have location on for anything. Does it still transmit if you don't have location on?
Yeah, GPS locates. So when you take a photo, GPS locates that on the device. It's just an inherent identifier within the actual photo. So you'll see that you can see that on any of your photos that you do. So for example, if you open your apps, you scroll up and you'll be able to see the location where you took the photo. It's just geotagging. That's what it does.
Wow.
So it's pretty impressive stuff, but it's also scary. So yes, absolutely. But the other thing I suggest, and that's to your social media accounts, for example, or anything to do with online shopping. And so, prime example at the moment is we're shopping so much more online. Lockdown, can't get to the shops, doing Woolworths shops, Coles shops, doing our clothes shops, whatever it is, right? We're using the same account on our email to use these online shopping services accounts as we do for our personal banking services accounts. So suddenly, one email account has access to a multitude of entry points. Now, the majority of people use a similar password for all kinds of services. So if you're giving your data and information to a possible online shopping service, that could be compromised, but that information therefore can then be used to access your financial accounts because of the fact that it's tied by either a correlated password, but generally by the same email address. So my top suggestion for users and for all above outside is set up an email account, a free one. You've got Hotmail, you've got Gmails, etc. for online shopping only. Anything you do, use an online email account. Don't use your business account. Do not use your work email address. Do not use your personal email address. Just set up a specific one. So, whatever it is, Tony@hotmail.com, or call it Tony Shopping, something that you're very clear about. Very clear. And then use a very different password, because at that point, if that happens to be compromised, not a big deal. You shut down that service, that account, and it doesn't have ties to your other personal, banking, etc., work, etc. The biggest problem is once that people get through that sort of online shopping, they can then compromise your device, which can be a corporate device, to then continue that on to compromise the corporate data. So, so that's another top tip. But of course, everyone's sort of out there asking about software even, right? What antivirus? So, there are security services rather than just antivirus. Antivirus detects viruses, but it doesn't necessarily detect malware or phishing. So, my consideration for that is...
Don't you mean like with worms down in the river, down in the sea? What do you mean by phishing?
Phishing with a PH instead of an F there, Tony. Yeah, so if you think about phishing, what's the term's referred to where it looks like a legitimate email, but it actually has some compromised information behind it. So prime example, as we were talking before, someone will pretend to send an email on my behalf to you saying, hey, Tony, thanks for doing this work. Here's my invoice. Please, could you pay this within the next 7 days? That's what's considered a phishing email. So antivirus software does not. A security platform software can, right? And so cyber threats and criminals out there these days are being a bit more ingenious and actually starting to test them against the major brands. So that's partly what, to be fair, it's hard to know where and how, but a decent brand and a well-known brand will actually spend quite a considerable amount of money on updating their threat databases and being able to actually then patch if needed to be or update them.
Good. All right. Well, thanks very much for that, Christoph. I mean, we flew through the time there. It's quite interesting how well we covered off a lot of different points. And just something I want to say to people is one of my personal bugbears and the browser. You use your browser on shopping and it says, do you want to save this credit card? Say no. Do not save your credit card details in the browser.
Yes, or anywhere, in fact.
Yeah, it's like, no, okay. I know, yeah, okay, it's convenient, blah, 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 blah. Don't do it. Because even if someone does hack in, if there's no credit card details stored anywhere, nothing they can do about it. So don't store it with a retailer. So if you bought it from a shop somewhere, online shop, and they go, I'll save it for future reference, don't do it. I don't even save the account. I always go in as guest.
Yeah, look, it can be handy to have an account because the ability to have an account means you can track your shopping, for example.
Okay, well, that might be a topic for another time. There we go.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. No worries, Christoph. And that's Christoph from aesit.com.au.
That's aesit.com.au.
Yeah, see, there we go. casit.com.au. Excellent. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Tony.
Perfect timing, because